Green Corn Festival, during one of these American indigenous holidays, right? During their own Sukkot, their own Feast of Tabernacles, their own harvest, during their own time. This is their tradition. They didn't learn this because these were the Pequots. The Pequots had nothing to do with the Pilgrims, not at least what they tell us about Thanksgiving. Right? But they were practicing their autumn feast, the Feast of Tabernacles, the green corn, whatever you want to call it. It says here, we all need to learn the painful history of Thanksgiving so we do not live in lies. Abraham Lincoln proclaimed the day of Thanksgiving in 1863, which we're going over. You know, that's when it really kind of made it a national holiday, and not until 1863, right, by Abraham Lincoln. Now, Lincoln and these people were celebrating a lot of bad things in Thanksgiving. We're about to read it right now. The federal government declared the last Thursday in November as the legal holiday of Thanksgiving in 1898. However, the meaning of Thanksgiving for Native Americans is filled with painful history, which has been covered up with the Pilgrims and Indian story. Right, so apart from the Sephardic Jews and the American Indians having this tradition and it being a religious ceremonial, spiritual practice, something very negative happened also that's related to Thanksgiving. Most of us associate the holiday with happy pilgrims and Indians sitting down to a big feast. And that did happen once, right? Once. But as word spread in England about the paradise to be found in the world, religious zealots called Puritans began arriving by the boatload. These so-called Puritans, who were they, right? Finding no fences around the land, they considered it to be in the public domain. Joined by the other British settlers, they seized land, capturing strong young natives for slaves and killing the rest. But the Pequot Nation had not agreed to peace treaty. Squanto had negotiated and they fought back. The Pequot War was one of the bloodiest Indian wars ever fought. Now listen to this. In 1637, near present-day Groton, Connecticut, over 700 men, women, and children at the Pequot tribe had gathered for their annual Green Corn Festival, which is our Thanksgiving celebration. All right? Green Corn Festival. They were doing what? They were already celebrating their Green Corn Festival, right? Giving their first fruits to the Most High. And what happened? They were attacked, and they lost over, 700 men, women, and children in one day. In the pre-dawn hours, the sleeping Indians were surrounded by English and Dutch mercenaries who ordered them to come outside. Those who came out were shot or clubbed to death, while the terrified women and children who huddled inside the longhouse were burned alive. Right? The next day, John Winthrop, this is historic. John Winthrop, the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, declared a day of Thanksgiving because 700 unarmed men, women, and children he had been murdered. And they're actually quoting him. We've seen the primary sources. All right, so that's a negative part of Thanksgiving. Again, Thanksgiving history, the Pequot Massacre of 1637. The inheritors of this land, we know as the United States, created the festivity of Thanksgiving. However, the indigenous tribes of America initially celebrated the annual Green Corn Festival, also known as Busk, all right? They already had that tradition. The Pilgrims didn't bring that over here, which was a time for fasting before a celebrated feast of the first fruits took place. Why is this in parentheses? You see, they give you subliminal truths. They're letting you know, pay attention. First fruits. Who also does first fruits? This was to honor the first batch of the harvest and was a week-long ceremony which involved dancing, singing, games, and of course the feast. The Pequot Indians were a tribe that were in the region of New England when the early settlers arrived during the early 1600s. Among the arrival of the settlers, there were always acts of genocide and war amongst both parties. The New England settlers even held the settlers as slaves and were temptations, and in many cases taken back to England like cattle. According to modern Pequot folks' tales, the story of Thanksgiving as we know it seems to be one-sided. On May 26, 1637, between 500 and 700 Pequots were murdered during a raid, which was in retaliation for previous attacks on white settlers, thought to hijack Europeans, and maybe they were defending themselves there too. Spearheaded by Captain John Mason, they surrounded the village and eventually burned it down. They were all killed, chased, beaten, and shot by the settlers with help from other indigenous allies, in particular the Mohegan tribes and the Narragansett, right? They believe it or not, the Narragansett actually, and another tribe, who acted as scouts and informants for the settlers. The only survivors of the Pequot tribe after the massacre were a small group of warriors who were on scouting missions with their leader, Sosakos. These small raids and genocidal attacks were always celebrated within the European settlers' Thanksgiving until finally, listen, they were celebrating these raids, these massacres. They did it on feast days until finally they decided to create one day to unify all the Thanksgiving events that European settlers were celebrating to offer gratitude for their survival and abundance. The illusion created to envision Thanksgiving as a day to honor the unity between the settlers and indigenous Americans is laughable. Indians live as a second-class citizen on reservations. The culture has been destroyed. Genocidal acts of terrorism get overlooked and swept under the rug, and no one acknowledges that the true natives of America, whether brown or black or Moorish, right? Whether they're brown or black, why did they say that, were bonded to slavery during the transition post-American Indian War. All right, the Pequot Massacre. Yes, the Pequot Massacre. And this is found in the true relation of the late Battelle fought in New England between the English and the savages, with the present state of things there. And this is written by Philip Vincent. This is back from 1637. You can actually find this book is right here, and it just tells you what went on. You know, what we just basically read, a little bit more detailed, a little bit more horrific, actually. All right, so you can go ahead and read it yourself. And yeah, they were on their feast, green corn, that they were celebrating the first fruits that they already had. They didn't learn that from the Pilgrims. The Pequots weren't with the Pilgrims, so they had their own traditions. Right, so it's not brought by them. Make sure that if you want to read it, this is it right here. Now I want to go to this. All right. Remind this part of the this part of the Thanksgiving is obviously the one that turns your stomach and everything, right? And I just wanna let you know this is nothing like out of the ordinary. You know, like whenever the colonists came, and I just want to remind you, they're saying white settlers here. There was a reason I started this video a certain way so you can understand who the settlers were. When we're talking about today, black on black crime, let's not forget that. That's what I'm talking about. Don't go right back into the victim. Oh, the white man, he hated the white man, and no. I'm sorry. It's 1600s. You gotta understand who's the people they're calling white there. So, again, a lot of those so-called white men that are really so-called black people, you have in your ancestry too. You have the good, the bad, and the ugly. You gotta embrace all your lines and all, the past is the past. Now, again, yes, somebody made a comment that we're celebrating a ritual. It did become a ritual. We don't have to, though. We don't have to continue the ritual, though. We can correct what it really is. What was our ancestors doing? What was our ancestors doing on that day they got murdered? They were having their green corn and giving thanks to the first fruits, the harvest feast. So, it's up to you how you want to see it. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I give thanks for different reasons. I give thanks for other things. I give things, and yes, and I also mourn what happened on that massacre of 1637. What happened, I also mourn that. We remember. And again, we can't keep blaming. Oh, and you want to blame it, and you want to kind of like take yourself out of that equation, like it might have not been some of your ancestors. But that's just the unfortunate part. But it doesn't have to be unfortunate. That's about knowing thyself truly in their history, your whole, like your whole self coming back together, like after all these years, all the mixture, everything, all these, all we've been through. We're here right now. You are here right now. You represent all these ancestors, the indigenous ones, the ones that came here, whether they were coming here because of their struggles over there or because they just, wanted to take advantage of those opportunities that they had over here in a negative way. Either way, you might have that ancestry. So I don't know how to, emphasize this. This is what I've been trying to slowly kind of show, and I try to do it with historical sources, genealogy, and everything like that. You know, people attack me because they feel like, it's okay. You want to be 100% Indian, you feel like I'm still, going to be 100. That's fine, man. That's fine. You lean more towards that. It's really it's not about talking. It's more about actions. It's not saying I'm an Indian because I'm an Indian. It's all about actions. You see, we didn't name ourselves chiefs back then. The people chose the chief for a certain reason. The people chose the chief for a certain reason. So the real people, when shit hits the fan and we start really making this happen for real, having a good, really establishing a real, how we used to do it in a real positive manner. You're gonna see how the real ones are gonna pick the real ones. They're not gonna pick them because they're popular or because they got the most likes on Facebook or the most followers. They're gonna pick them because of who they are, what they have done, their actions, their heart, because they're gonna fight for their people. They're not just gonna walk over some injustice is happening on the side. He ain't gonna look the other way.
That's right.
Or he's not gonna take a contract or a deal just because he wants to be a billionaire. And then he's gonna talk bad about his brother just because his brother is trying to wake you up. He's trying to wake you up. He may not know how to say it in the right way. He still might be on the journey. They still might. We're all in different stages of this. I'm still learning too. All right. So again, that part was very emotional right there, and I put the music behind it. It's gotta be emotional. They do that to us in Hollywood. They add this emotion and they make us cry. Oh, we African. It's so beautiful. We like. It's just like emotional, right? So it's got to be emotional. It's okay. It's okay to let go sometimes. It's okay if you feel tearful and you want to gain goosebumps and you want to cry. Go ahead. That's releasing. That's real peace. That's therapy. That's healing. That's healing. We gotta heal. We gotta heal. We gotta recognize our wrongs too. Our forefathers, what they did too. Everybody wasn't hunky-dory, living peaceful and doing good things. Just gotta acknowledge all this stuff, and just do better. We're supposed to learn from history. We're not supposed to repeat it. We repeat it every time. Every time you judge somebody, every time you come at somebody and you're just mad and you're just hateful, you just want to fight and bicker and debate, we keep repeating it. You gotta heal. Sometimes you gotta just breathe. Just breathe. The breath taker, as they call them, right? The green corn, first fruits of the breath taker. I'm gonna continue the video now.